Now, in an effort to contain a worsening coronavirus outbreak, the Trump administration is turning to Silicon Valley for help. Last week, as the White House announced the rollout of a new initiative using artificial intelligence to help scientists better understand the coronavirus. The administration officials convened meetings with executives from Google, Facebook, Amazon, and others in an effort to leverage their technological expertise in big data. But privacy advocates are worried, especially since it was revealed that in 2013 that these same companies were working with the U.S. intelligence agencies. How to strike a balance between giving in personal data, or some of them, and getting the benefits modern technology brings. And in this case, do we have to choose between privacy and health? Two guests joining me to discuss all this is from New York City via Skype, David Auerbach, writer, critic, and former software engineer at Google and Microsoft. And joining me by phone here from Beijing is Zhang, associate professor from Beijing Normal University. Gentlemen, thank you for both of you for joining us. David, I want to begin with you. Last week, the Washington Post reported that the White House is seeking the help from Google, Facebook, and others to assist in monitoring the spread of the COVID-19. As of yesterday, the cases in America is quickly nearing 50,000. What do you think these technology firms can provide, and how useful will their information be?
It's still somewhat speculative. The firms themselves have been fairly cagey about what they plan or do not plan to do, and at this point it does not seem that they're collecting any data beyond what they have been. Google in the past had a project called Flu Trends in which they attempted to monitor people searching for phrases around flu symptoms. And it had some interesting, if inconclusive, results. It's unclear what the administration is exactly trying to get from these companies now. There's certainly given the scrambling response from the Trump administration, it's possible that they simply went to Silicon Valley and said, please help us out, we're dying here. But what they could do is they could use location data in particular to track exactly how many people are or are not obeying lockdowns, for example. But even that, it's unclear how it would be deployed.
So you're saying that so far nothing constitutes a invasion of privacy?
I wouldn't, certainly there could be a privacy invasion, but it's an extension of the invasions of privacy that these companies have already been making into our lives for many years now. So the question is, to what extent will this information be shared? As far as we know, no information has yet been shared with the federal government, but such initiatives could be taken by state governments. And I live in New York, where we are at something of the epicenter of the outbreak in the United States. And I would not be surprised if our state government attempts to make use of that data, since we are currently under lockdown, but it does seem that a lot of people are still not taking it altogether seriously.
All right, I want to turn to you, Mr. Zhang, from Beijing. Big data companies are also working with authorities in China to fight the coronavirus. For example, towards the end of the Wuhan lockdown, people who tested negative have a healthy QR code, and only with this healthy QR code can one person travel outside the Wuhan temporarily. Also, China's major telecommunications companies are teaming up with local government to track down people's whereabouts to see if they have been to regions badly hit by the coronavirus. Should people be worried about their privacy, or perhaps they need to give up some privacy so that the rest of the community can be safer?
Yeah, the Chinese approach, Chinese companies have been more upfront using this kind of geolocation data for more frontline jobs. For example, as you said, tracking the infection vectors, finding at-risk people and quarantining people, and also giving people clear green lights to return to work. And I would actually argue there's really no way around that, because at the moment, when the entire society goes into lockdown, goes into social distancing, it appears this kind of more targeted, big data-enabled, targeted quarantine doesn't really matter that much. But when you come out of it and restart the economy, as the Asian countries already demonstrated, you're going to have imported cases. And also in the U.S., because the social distancing may not work that well because what young people are doing, it's going to drag on for a long time. And just the mere fact that we're dealing with an exponential function, so the infection number will drop sharply at the beginning, and then it will stay flat and stay at low levels for a very long time. So you can't shut your economy forever. So you have to transition into some sort of targeted quarantining. So they better get working now. So
you're saying that basically big data played a major role, a big role,
yeah,
in terms of helping China to relatively rapidly contain this outbreak?
I would say it's as important as vaccine and treatment, and it's the one that we actually know how to do, definitely. So they should do it, yeah.
Okay, let's hope that's the case when it comes to developing a vaccine. David, I want to go to you. A report by CNBC last week suggested that the U.S. government was interested in gathering not the location data that our friend Mr. Zhang just talked about, but also clinical data. Are critics right
Yes.
to point out that these measures test the limits of personal privacy, or is this going to be part of the new normal?
I suspect it will eventually become part of the new normal, but I think people have to remember just how unprepared the United States is for this. The sorts of infrastructure to track and monitor and enforce anything like this simply, barely exists. The information, even that which is collected now, is spread out disparately between multiple companies. And so the United States is really scrambling now to have any sort of tracking procedures in place. We are not in a mass testing phase right now, so we cannot even report accurately the number of cases we have. I think that if the coronavirus does not wholly overtake us, we will start seeing systems like this deployed, but more at the local level than at the federal level, because the federal government is so far behind in any sort of preparation for this sort of for this sort of event, and that's for better or for worse. So one can ironically say that our privacy is perhaps being invaded less than it might be, but maybe that is actually a bad thing, because there are targeted ways in which privacy invasion might actually be a great help in stemming the virus right now.
Mr. Zhang, I'm pretty sure our viewers, wherever they are, on either side of the Pacific, across Asia, Eurasia, they're probably concerned about the safety of their personal data. Is it known how long their personal data can usually be stored in the servers that is can or cannot be accessed by the government? Can we be sure that after the virus is contained, that these companies will not abuse the data for their own commercial or financial purposes?
So as far as I understand it, the storage limit is unlimited. So even in the European Union, where data protection is the most stringent, the general data protection regulations stipulate you can't store data beyond your service to the customer. However, there's no specific limit on that, which means the companies can argue that I'm keeping this account open so the customer might return, so I can keep the data forever as long as I have a disk space. So yeah, you sort of have to be very what the companies are doing. However, particular to this virus situation, there's a silver lining. There's no new data collection capabilities being implemented. Instead, companies are showing what they already do. So you're actually exposing the underbelly of the data collection network, and so people know what data are being collected and what they can be used for, so people can start having a good informed discussion. And I hope one of the things that's involved in this new discussion is that the fact that this data can be used for good, and they should force these companies to do good with the data. So because I really think the data breach containment method has already failed. That ship has already sailed a long time ago. So instead of trying to curtail big data, we should really force these companies to enhance the capability to track down people who misuse data, who do identity theft, that sort of thing. That might actually be a more pragmatic way to solve the problem.
Well, Professor Zhang, I want to stay with you and talk about allegations of double standards. The Western media has been quick to point out that China has readily used the mass surveillance techniques to contain the spread of the COVID-19, but they have also criticized China for it, even though the WHO commended China for using these big data tools. Is it fair to say that China or other countries in Asia, including Israel even in the Middle East, are acting in an authoritarian way, if now that the U.S. is also interested in using the same tools? Is there a double standard here?
Well, they probably rebranded freedom something and say it's okay. Yeah, I remember headlines saying China is going full authoritarian with the talking drone thing. This is something like that it's their bread and butter. I mean, nobody wants to read news reports that's just a dry list of objective facts. So you got to blend some emotions into it to attract audiences. And fear and hate is definitely the easiest thing to whip up. So they keep doing it. However, people know there's hypocrisy involved. So in a way, you should avoid listening to what they say, but look at what they are doing. So, for example, if you look at the stock markets, especially that's where people put their money, and just compare the performance when China was handling COVID-19 versus when the U.S. have to do it, you see some confidence difference there. And the good thing now is that when they see things work in China, they're not borrowing it. They're not going to write an apology piece, but at least China is still going to be the villain, but they will stop attacking the specific things that China has been doing. So China can at least now work on those things, improve them without hindrance. And that will benefit everyone since they will be borrowing it in the end. So that's something to look forward to.
Very interesting. Great insight, Professor Zhang. I also want to thank our guest in America, David Auerbach, writer and critic, formerly with Microsoft, and also Zhang from Beijing Normal University. And that's all for this edition of The Point. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Download the CGTN app to watch our show, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thank you for watching. I'm Wang Guan, sitting in for Liu Xin.